and welcome to another episode of History with Dave. I'm here with Sharyn Mitchell, who is from the Berea College Special Collections and Archives, and we are going to talk about Mary Merritt, who was the first licensed nurse in Kentucky, and that was especially significant because she was an African-American female, and so it's an interesting part of our history that I don't think we get to talk enough about. So
she's kind of unheralded.
Yeah, and it gives us a fuller picture, especially with some of our other historical figures like Cassius Clay and whatnot. But why don't you tell me a little bit about Mary's life in Berea and how her early life, I guess.
Well, Mary was born, I think, at 1881, so she's the latter part of the century there. She attended school at Berea College, and she was in that second nurses program.
Okay.
At that point, it was a vocational program, and so it was like a 2-year thing. And she was actually re-enrolled or for college in the literary group when the Day Law was passed.
Okay.
So at that point, she was not able to continue her education at Berea.
And then she's in a teaching program and comes back for the nursing. Is that correct?
Well, no, she actually was in the nursing program.
Okay.
And now at that point, you had to remember that you didn't need a 4-year degree to teach. So she was in the program, and when she couldn't continue, then she starts teaching.
Okay.
And she actually taught in what they call the Fee Street School or the Colored School. It was a school before Middletown. It was in, if you know anything about Berea, it was down on the street that's, where the Methodist Church goes down.
Good.
So she taught a little bit there, and then she taught up in Manchester. And she didn't like teaching in Manchester because she would have to take the train so far, and then she'd have to go on mule back for another 20-some miles. So she really didn't like that at all.
Oh. Interesting. So then she gets back into nursing, but she has to go to, how does she complete her, or get her license?
Her license. Now, let me, a little bit more about her other life.
Okay.
But she was in the household of President Frost, Eleanor and William Frost, who was the president of the college at that point. So she was like a matron or a housekeeper, matron, took care of the kids, whatever. So she actually leaves them to go to school in D.C., and she attended the Freedman School in D.C. So that's where she actually got her license before she comes back.
Become a nurse. And then when she comes back to Kentucky, and she was a nurse for Cassius Clay. I don't know that it was very long, and I believe it was towards the end of his life, but she was up at Whitehall for a little while.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting, given that she's this first African-American nurse, and then she's there with Cassius Clay and all of the work he had done for abolition.
So she's there, and she ends up doing a nursing thing in Pittsburgh, or they were offering her a position there, and so she had already obligated and said, no, I'm not going to leave for X amount of money. So she finished out her term, turned down some good money, and then she ends up at Louisville, at the Red Cross Hospital in Louisville, which was about to go under.
Okay.
I think it was like a 12-bed hospital, and they needed somebody. They said that the doctors were basically just not going to practice or anything there. So they needed some help. So she actually was there 30-some years.
Oh, wow.
And took it from a 10 or 12-bed hospital to over 100.
Wow. And that at one point was that the only hospital in
Louisville for blacks.
For blacks. Okay. Very interesting.
Which is, I thought, interesting because I was actually born at that hospital.
Oh,
Knew nothing about any of that background, but
that's a neat personal connection when you can connect back to that history.
yeah, because at that point the hospitals were segregated, and my parents were like at Kentucky State, so I ended up being born in Louisville. Never lived there. Oh.
So she can. That's where she spends the rest of her life, is in Louisville.
In Louisville, and then she does come back on occasion to visit with the Frost, and evidently had a really good rapport with them, because they talk about the days that she's coming back, and they're, especially Eleanor Frost, is really happy to see her. There's letters in the diaries where even Miss Frost says that she wished she lived among the coloreds. So she was, and she did a lot of charitable, aside from, she never married, never had kids, but she did a lot of charitable work. And in Berea, there was the area that she was from, Union or Possum Kingdom or that way, there was a Miss Grace Frazier who had a friendship home. It was basically a nursing home facility. So she would contribute money to that on a regular basis. And Miss Grace Frazier was well known also in Berea.
Well, it sounds like she was very, very educated and charitable lady, and definitely worthy for us to commemorate. She was recently commemorated with a mural in Old Town in Berea, correct?
Right, and it's a beautiful rendition. Okay. Yeah. She also received one of the highest awards that the Negro nurses could receive for the nation. So she, at the latter end of her life, she begins to get recognized for all that she really has done.
Wonderful. And then is she buried in Louisville, or?
Yes, she's buried in Louisville.
Okay.
Yes. So and as far as I know, I don't know of any living relatives, but I'm sure that there's some around that we just don't know about.
Oh, great. Well, Sharyn, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful bit of Madison County history with us, and hopefully you and I will be able to collaborate a little bit more on some other stuff. And I love hearing these stories, because it's stuff that, as a historian, you don't always get to take the time to look at, but it gives us that fuller picture of our history for our county and our state.
Well, the records, and once I started looking at them, she's going to be a wonderful person to document and to exhibit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of History with Dave. And if you would like more information about Mary Merritt, please contact the Berea College Library Special Collections and Archives.